Hey guys, welcome back. So tonight's going to be a little bit different. Normally for my video blogs I take your questions and I give you my 2 cents, but in this instance I just want to give you my 2 cents because I'm sure like many of you, I found myself looking at either the TV or the computer and I've been about ready to scream at these deceitful, duplicitous Republicans and their ridiculous plans to fix healthcare in this country. What I find most infuriating is you have dirtbags like this Jason Chaffetz coming on TV and talking about the need for Americans to sacrifice more and they're going to have to make better decisions and they're going to have to suffer the consequences of their decisions. And where was this talk during the campaign? Where was this nonsense about iPhones ruining health care during the campaign? No, during the campaign you had that bloated orange asshole Donald Trump talking about how I want everybody to have insurance coverage and we're going to insure everybody and it's going to be the best, most tremendous coverage you've ever seen, believe me. And the second the election is over, they change their tune. And I find that to be infuriating. But what irritates me the most is the fact that here we are in 2017 in the richest, most prosperous country the world has ever known, and we're still debating whether or not healthcare is a basic human right. If you think back to the debate that Bernie Sanders had with that disgusting ball of wax, Ted Cruz, he could not get Cruz to admit that healthcare is a basic human right. You know, Cruz wanted to parse words and argue semantics and talk about access, and Bernie still could not get him to admit healthcare is a basic human right. And in my opinion, when you have a country that in aggregate is as rich and as prosperous as the United States, certain things should be off the table. And healthcare should be one of them. Now, granted, not everybody in this country participates equally in the prosperity, but in aggregate, we are the richest country the world has ever known, and we still can't manage to ensure that all of our people have access to healthcare. And that's outrageous, and that's a disgrace in this country. And I find it to be incredibly disingenuous that while people like Jason Chaffetz are coming on TV and turning their nose up at middle class and lower income Americans and lecturing them about their purchasing of iPhones and all of that, as if somehow that fixes the healthcare crisis in this country. At the same time they're doing that, his party is advocating for reducing taxes on the richest Americans in the country and the most profitable companies on earth. So they can somehow figure out a way to reduce taxes on those people and then simply say, well, there's just no way we can afford to provide health care coverage to every American. And Republicans talk about universal health care coverage as if it's this mythical idea that's never been implemented successfully. I mean, look around the world. Look at the UK. Look at Canada. Look at Switzerland. Look at all these countries that manage to insure their people and do it well and make sure that they have the health care that they need. Also, I find it to be incredibly irritating that at the same time they're talking about Americans having to suffer the consequences of their decision making. They want to increase the defense spending by, and you'll have to excuse me here because I don't have the exact number, but something like $50 billion a year. Now, do you realize we spend more than the next top 9 spenders combined? The U.S., I believe, spends something like 35 to 40% of all the defense spending that goes on in the world. And we need to increase that by another $50 billion a year, yet we can't, we just, God forbid, we do anything to help people who need health care. That's outrageous. And if you think about why that's happening, and by the way, I want our military to be the strongest in the world. I want our men and women in uniform to have access to the best, most sophisticated weaponry on the planet to defend us. But if you think that we already spend more than the next 9 top countries combined, if you think we don't already have the world's best military, you're crazy. The reason we're increasing spending on defense by $50 billion a year is because the defense contractors very effective lobbyists, and they're big campaign contributors. And if you're the average ordinary citizen and you don't have a lobbyist and you can't make big campaign contributions, you are being sold up the river with this nonsense. And look, what I find to be super frustrating is how so many people buy into this nonsense that the Republicans are spreading about how free market principles will just somehow remedy all the issues in our healthcare system. And don't get me wrong, I believe in the free market. I believe in capitalism. I have worked for myself since I've been 21. I bought my first stock when I was 18, and I've been investing for the last 15 years. I think capitalism is about as good a system as you can have because it really does unleash human potential. But better than any other system we've found so far. But there are certain things where the free market does not do a good job. And there are certain things that in a society as prosperous as ours that shouldn't even be left to the free market. And as I've said, healthcare is one of them. But let me tell you why the free market is not going to fix healthcare. So you hear Republicans talk about competition as if it's this magic pixie dust you just sprinkle on the healthcare industry and all of a sudden the problems are fixed. Well, competition doesn't do anything to encourage healthcare companies to insure people who are going to cost them money. That's not how the free market system works. Here's a good example. Think about the credit card industry. It's about as competitive as you could possibly get. They can compete across state lines. They spend billions of dollars a year on advertising and marketing. They send out hundreds of millions of pre-approved offers every year. They're constantly trying to outdo each other with perks and cash back and everything else you can think of. And even with all that competition in the credit card industry, if you are not somebody they consider a desirable customer, you can't get credit to save your life. And the health insurance industry is no different. If you're not somebody that they view as a desirable customer, they are not going to give you coverage, or they're going to charge you such an exorbitant premium you can't afford it. That is free market principles and capitalism at their best, doing what they're supposed to do. Increase maximum profitability. And there should be no profit incentive in healthcare. The idea that you can have a profit incentive in healthcare and in any way, shape, or form have a desirable outcome is ridiculous. That's not going to happen. So, think about what health insurance was like before the Affordable Care Act. Women were charged more because they could become pregnant. The elderly were charged more because they tend to have more medical issues. If you fell into some high risk category, you were charged an exorbitant premium that most people couldn't afford. They did all kinds of things to limit their losses. So, by the way, to go back to that idiot Jason Chaffetz, before the Affordable Health Care Act, you could have had an ordinary, hardworking, middle-class American who's done everything right. He's been saving for retirement. He's been saving for a rainy day. He bought health insurance. He's paid into the policy his entire life, and he still could have found himself in bankruptcy because of one serious illness. Before you had the Affordable Health Care Act, you had there were no maximum out-of-pocket expenses for the patient. So a lot of people, if they had a serious illness, they couldn't continue to pay for all their portions of the co-pays and deductibles and medicines that they needed. Or they paid into this policy their entire life, and the insurance company imposes some arbitrary lifetime limit. So, let's say you've paid into a policy your whole life, and all of a sudden you find out you have cancer, and some of those treatments cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, and then you get a notice in the mail that says you've hit your lifetime limit, you're no longer covered. I mean, if there is a profit incentive in health insurance, the companies are always going to look for every way possible to mitigate their losses. So, to me, I think there is only one real solution, which is universal health care. But at a bare minimum, we need a public option, which would at least act like gravity to keep the cost of insurance from going sky high. and making sure they can't discriminate against people who have pre-existing conditions or high risk or any of that. But no, I find what the Republicans to be doing absolutely infuriating, because it is so duplicitous. And what they try to do is they create these straw man arguments. So, if you look at the debate between Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz would find one example of somebody in Canada, maybe who had to wait a little too long for a procedure, without ever mentioning the tens of thousands of Americans every year who die because of lack of coverage. Or what they do is they'll find an example of someone in Canada or some other country that may have universal health care who was rich and powerful and came to the U.S. for treatment for some serious illness. Well, listen, the truth is, if you're rich and money is no object, of course you would want to come to the U.S. for medical care, because we have and you have a serious illness, because we have the best research hospitals, we have some of the best doctors and treatments in the world. But there's no plan being proposed by the Republican Party that would give the average ordinary American access to any of that. And I can guarantee you most average ordinary Americans are quite envious of the health care that the average ordinary Canadian has access to, knowing that if they get sick, they won't be denied treatment, knowing that if they get sick, they don't face the risk of bankruptcy for paying for their medicines and their treatment. So these straw man arguments that the Republicans throw up are infuriating to me. And by the way, I have to say this, but it's not just the fault of the Republicans. In 2008, when President Obama was elected, he had a supermajority in Congress. But he tried to play nice with the Republicans. He was too worried about the blue dog Democrats from conservative states that might not vote for a public option or might not vote for universal health care. And he really let us down. And don't get me wrong, I love President Obama. I think he is a good man. He's about as good as you can get, and he was a very good president, but he had some shortcomings in this area. When you look at the wave of populism that he rode in on, he should have been our generation's FDR. He should have used the bully pulpit to beat the Republicans into submission and to beat those in his own party into submission. He had a super majority in the Congress, and what he should have done is said, any of you who don't help me get a public option or universal health care, I'm going to make sure we primary you in your next election. I'm going to put you on trial before the American people, and they're going to be your judge and your jury, because I'm going to tell them you are doing the bidding of the donors instead of the bidding of the people. You are obstructing real health care reform that the people have elected me to get done. And he should have used the bully pulpit the way FDR did. During one of FDR's re-election campaigns, he said something to the effect of, "Never in history has any candidate been so universally hated, and I welcome their hate." That's the mentality Obama should have had, instead of being such an incrementalist and trying to play nice with the Republicans and the middle-of-the-road Democrats. But, I'm pretty irritated by all of this nonsense that you see. And what I find to be so sad about all of this is the number of people who really are going to suffer the consequences for voting this idiot into power and voting the rest of these deplorables back into office. So, that's my 2 cents, and hope you have a good night. Thanks for watching.